My parents call me morbid for being a pathologist while praising my brother for being a cruise ship entertainer. Now he forged my signature to steal my house. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I genuinely don't know where else to turn. My family has made me feel like a stranger in my own life for as long as I can remember, and what happened last week finally broke something in me. I'm a 31-year-old pathologist at a regional hospital. For those who don't know what that means, I'm the doctor who examines tissue samples, blood work, and biopsies to diagnose diseases. When your doctor tells you whether that lump is cancer or not, it's because someone like me spent hours analyzing cells under a microscope and running molecular tests. I've caught aggressive cancers early enough for patients to survive. I've identified rare infections that other doctors missed. Last month, I diagnosed a pediatric leukemia case that, because we caught it so early, has an excellent prognosis. That little girl is going to live because I noticed abnormal lymphoblasts in her blood smear. But according to my parents, I work with dead things and have a morbid obsession. My older brother Marcus is 33. He works as an entertainer on a cruise ship. He hosts trivia nights, leads pool games, and performs in variety shows. My parents have never stopped talking about how he spreads joy and makes people happy for a living. Every family gathering, every phone call, every holiday card they send to relatives features Marcus in his crisp white uniform, grinning on the deck of some massive ship. I'm usually mentioned as an afterthought. Oh, and Daniel is still doing his laboratory work. When I graduated from medical school, my parents came to the ceremony but spent most of the reception asking Marcus about his upcoming cruise to the Caribbean. When I completed my pathology residency, they forgot the date entirely because Marcus was performing in a passenger talent show that was being filmed for the cruise line's social media. When I bought my first house 2 years ago, a modest 3-bedroom place I'd saved for during years of residency poverty, my mother's only comment was, "Well, at least you won't be bringing your work home with you." I couldn't stand having those slides in my house. I've tried explaining what I do. I've tried showing them the impact. I once told my father about a case where I identified a rare fungal infection in a lung biopsy that 3 other doctors had missed, saving a young mother's life. He nodded, said, "That's nice," and then spent 45 minutes telling me about the conga line Marcus led at a passenger's 80th birthday party. I stopped trying after that. The thing is, I love my job. I genuinely do. There's something profound about being the person who finds the answer, who gives other doctors the information they need to save lives. I work in the quiet, in the background, and I've made peace with that. I don't need recognition from strangers. I just wanted my own family to see that what I do matters. Last week, I learned that wanting even that much was apparently too much to ask. I got a call from my bank regarding my mortgage. The representative asked me to verify some recent changes to my property deed. I told her I hadn't made any changes. She went quiet for a moment, then told me I needed to come in immediately. Someone had filed paperwork to add themselves to my deed as a joint owner. The signature on the documents was mine. Except I had never signed anything. When I saw the name that had been added, my stomach dropped through the floor. Marcus Allen Whitmore. My brother. I called my parents in a daze, somehow hoping there was an explanation, some misunderstanding. My mother answered, and when I told her what happened, she laughed. She actually laughed. "Oh, Daniel, Marcus mentioned something about that. He said you two had talked about it and you agreed. He needs to show more assets for some business opportunity. Don't be so dramatic." I told her I had never agreed to anything. I told her this was fraud, that Marcus had forged my signature on legal documents. Her tone changed instantly, but not in the way I expected. "Why do you always have to make everything about yourself?" she snapped. "Your brother has been working so hard, and he finally has a chance to build something real. You have your fancy doctor job, you have your house, and you can't even help your own family without making it into some big production? God, Daniel, this is exactly why we worry about you. You're so cold. So clinical. Just like your job." I hung up on her. I haven't spoken to either of my parents since. I filed a police report. I contacted a lawyer. I reported the deed fraud to the county recorder's office. I did everything by the book, because that's what I know how to do. I follow procedures. I document everything. I find the truth in the details. But right now, sitting in my house that my brother tried to steal, I feel more alone than I've ever felt in my life. I diagnose diseases to save lives, and my family treats me like I'm the disease. I don't know what's going to happen with Marcus or the fraud charges. I don't know if my parents will ever understand what they've done, not just with this, but with 31 years of making me feel like I was somehow defective for wanting to help people in my own way. I just needed to write this down. I needed someone to know that pathologists are doctors too. We save lives too. And we deserve families who understand that working with dead things means fighting like hell to keep people alive. Thanks for reading. I don't know if I'll update, but it helped to get this out. Edit. I'm overwhelmed by the responses. Thank you all for your support and for sharing your own experiences with family favoritism. Several people asked me to update when there's news about the fraud investigation. I will when I can. Update. It gets worse. Or better. I honestly can't tell anymore. First, thank you to everyone who responded to my original post. I read every comment, even when I couldn't respond. The messages from other pathologists and lab professionals especially meant a lot. We really are the invisible backbone of medicine, and it helps to know others understand. I need to update you all on what's happened, because it spiraled into something I never could have anticipated. After I filed the police report about the deed fraud, things moved faster than I expected. The detective assigned to my case, a woman named Detective Reyes, took one look at the forged documents and told me something that made my blood run cold. This isn't his first time. She explained that when they ran Marcus's information through their systems, flags started popping up. The cruise line he works for had filed an internal complaint about him 8 months ago, which they had escalated to federal authorities 3 months later. They had been building a case against him, and my fraud report had just connected several loose ends they'd been trying to tie together. Marcus, it turns out, wasn't just a cruise ship entertainer. For the past 4 years, he had been running a ticket fraud scheme. He had access to the booking system through his position and had been creating fake promotional tickets, selling them at a discount to passengers who thought they were getting deals, and pocketing the money. He'd also been taking deposits for exclusive excursions that didn't exist. The amounts weren't huge individually, but over 4 years, they added up. The cruise line's initial estimate was somewhere around $280,000 in fraud. But here's where my house comes in. When the federal investigators started looking into Marcus's finances, they found almost nothing. No significant savings, no investments, no assets. For someone who had allegedly stolen nearly $300,000, he had remarkably little to show for it. They suspected he was hiding money somewhere, possibly offshore, but they couldn't prove it. Then they found the deed change on my house. According to Detective Reyes, Marcus had been using the fake property ownership to appear legitimate to potential investors. He was recruiting for what the investigators believe was going to be his next venture, a timeshare-style vacation club scheme. He needed to show assets, to look established and successful. And what better asset than a house owned by his brother, the doctor? He was planning to leverage my house, my home that I worked years to afford, to scam even more people. When the investigators contacted the cruise line's corporate security, everything accelerated. Federal wire fraud charges. Multiple counts. The cruise line started cooperating fully because they wanted to recover their losses and avoid public relations disasters. I had to give a statement to federal investigators. I sat in a small room with 2 FBI agents and told them everything. The forged signature, my mother's dismissive response, the years of family dynamics that I now understood had enabled Marcus to believe he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. One of the agents, an older man with kind eyes, asked me if I knew about any of Marcus's schemes. I told him I had no idea. I told him I barely knew my brother at all. Your parents, he said carefully, do you think they knew? I thought about that for a long time before answering. My mother's laugh when I told her about the fraud. The way she called me dramatic for being upset that my brother had forged my signature on legal documents. I think, I said slowly, that they knew something was wrong and they chose not to see it. They've been choosing not to see things about Marcus for his entire life. The agent nodded like this was a familiar story. 3 weeks after my initial police report, Marcus was arrested at port in Miami. I found out through the news before anyone in my family called me. My mother did call eventually. At 2 in the morning, sobbing. They're saying terrible things about Marcus, she cried. They're saying he stole money, that he hurt people. It's not true, Daniel. You have to help him. You have to drop the charges. I told her I didn't have the power to drop federal charges even if I wanted to. Then tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you signed those papers. I sat there in my dark bedroom, listening to my mother ask me to commit perjury to protect the son who had tried to steal my house. No, I said. Daniel, please. He's your brother. He forged my signature. He tried to use my home to scam more people. And you're asking me to lie to federal investigators. You don't understand. He was under so much pressure. The cruise line wasn't treating him well, and he had debts, and he just needed some help. If you had been there for him more, if you had been a better brother. I hung up. I blocked her number. I blocked my father's number the next day when he sent me a text that read, Your mother is devastated. I hope you're happy. You always were jealous of Marcus. Jealous. I spent 7 years in medical school and residency. I work 60-hour weeks diagnosing diseases that save lives. I have helped more people in a single month than Marcus has in his entire career of spreading joy. But I was the jealous one. The investigation is ongoing. My lawyer tells me the property fraud charge alone carries up to 5 years, but the federal wire fraud charges could add significantly more. The cruise line has already terminated Marcus and is pursuing civil damages. I've started seeing a therapist. She's helping me understand that what happened with the deed wasn't really about the deed at all. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being told that I was less than, that my contributions didn't matter, that Marcus could do whatever he wanted and I should accommodate him. My house is safe now. The fraudulent deed change has been voided. My name, and only my name, is on the property. But I've lost my family. Or maybe I never really had one to begin with. I'll update again when there's news about the trial. Thank you all for listening. Update 2. Federal investigators discovered more. So much more. It's been 6 weeks since my last update, and I need to share what's happened because it's beyond anything I imagined. The federal investigation into Marcus expanded significantly. The initial estimate of $280,000 in fraud from the cruise line? That was just what they found in the company's internal audit. Once the FBI started digging into Marcus's personal finances and communications, the picture got much bigger. Marcus had been running multiple schemes simultaneously. Beyond the ticket fraud and fake excursions, investigators discovered he had been recruiting passengers into what he called an elite cruiser investment club. He'd target wealthy retirees, befriend them during voyages, and convince them to invest in a non-existent cruise ship timeshare program. He had fake brochures, fake contracts, and a fake website. Over 3 years, he'd collected deposits from at least 47 people, totaling over $520,000. My house wasn't just meant to impress potential future victims. He'd been showing Dr. Deed documents to current victims to prove he was invested in real estate too. One victim, an 82-year-old widow from Connecticut, told investigators she gave Marcus $35,000 specifically because he showed her proof that he owned property and was a family man with roots. He showed her a photo of my house with him photoshopped onto the front porch. When the FBI agent told me this, I actually had to excuse myself. I went to the bathroom and threw up. The idea that my home, the place I retreat to after diagnosing the worst cases of cancer and infection, had been used to steal from an elderly widow made me physically ill. The total fraud amount, once all the schemes were accounted for, exceeded $840,000. Federal prosecutors added additional charges. The case was being fast-tracked because of the number of elderly victims and the multi-state nature of the crimes. Marcus's public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecution wasn't interested in anything less than significant prison time. Through all of this, my parents continued their campaign of blame. My father showed up at my house unannounced 2 weeks ago. I watched him through the window, knocking on my door, then pacing in my driveway, then sitting on my front steps for 20 minutes. I didn't open the door. He left a handwritten letter in my mailbox. I'll share the relevant parts. Daniel, I don't know what we did to make you hate your brother so much. He made mistakes, but he's family. Your mother hasn't stopped crying since this started. You're a doctor. You're supposed to help people. Why won't you help your own family? My therapist and I dissected that letter for an entire session. The complete inability to see Marcus as responsible for his own choices. The positioning of my legitimate response to criminal fraud as hatred. The expectation that my medical training somehow obligated me to cover up crimes. I wrote back. One sentence, I help people by finding the truth. That's what I did. I haven't heard from him since. There's been one unexpected bright spot in all of this. My hospital administration found out about the situation, not because I told them, but because a reporter called looking for comment. Apparently, the doctor brother angle was something the media was interested in. My department chief called me into his office, and I honestly thought I was going to be asked to take a leave of absence to distance the hospital from the scandal. Instead, Dr. Patterson, who has been the chief of pathology for 15 years, sat me down and told me something I'll never forget. Daniel, he said, I've been watching your work for 3 years. Your diagnostic accuracy rate is exceptional. Your attention to detail is remarkable. And now I understand where that comes from. You were trained your entire life to be meticulous, to see what others miss, because no one was paying attention to you. That's a tragedy for the boy you were, but it made you into one of the finest pathologists I've ever worked with. He told me that when he retires in 8 months, he wants to recommend me as his replacement. I cried in his office. I actually cried. This man, who has barely spoken to me beyond clinical contexts in 3 years, saw more in me in that 5-minute conversation than my parents have seen in my entire life. The trial is scheduled for next month. I'll be called as a witness for the prosecution. I'm told it should be straightforward, just confirming that I never signed the deed documents and had no knowledge of Marcus's schemes. I'm nervous, but I'm ready. I've spent my entire career finding the truth in the smallest details. This is no different. Update 3. 1 month after the trial. Marcus got 5 years. And something I never expected. It's been 2 months since my last update and about 4 weeks since Marcus's sentencing. I've been processing everything before writing this, because what happened was both exactly what I expected and completely surprising. The trial lasted 5 days. I testified on day 2. Walking into that federal courtroom was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Not because I was scared of the questions, but because Marcus was sitting at the defense table, and it was the first time I'd seen him in almost a year. He looked different. Smaller, somehow. The cruise ship entertainer tan had faded, and the confident swagger I remembered from every family gathering was completely gone. He was wearing an ill-fitting suit that I suspect was borrowed, and when our eyes met, he looked away first. The prosecutor walked me through everything. The forged signature. My discovery of the deed change. My mother's dismissive response. I answered every question calmly and completely. When the defense attorney tried to suggest that perhaps I had verbally agreed to something and simply forgot, I looked at the jury and said, "I'm a pathologist. My entire career is built on precise documentation and meticulous record-keeping. I do not forget what I agree to." Several jurors nodded. The most emotional part of the trial wasn't my testimony. It was the victim impact statements on day 4. The 82-year-old widow from Connecticut, Mrs. Eleanor Chen, took the stand. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with white hair pinned up neatly and a blue cardigan buttoned to her throat. She had given Marcus $35,000, her entire savings after her husband's death, because he promised her guaranteed returns and showed her the photo of my house. "I wanted to leave something for my grandchildren," she said, her voice wavering but clear. I trusted him. He called me Grandma Eleanor. He remembered my birthday. He told me I reminded him of his own grandmother. Marcus's grandmother died when he was 4. He doesn't remember her at all. I know because I was there when our mother told him that at a family dinner years ago, and he laughed about it. Mrs. Chen's testimony lasted 20 minutes. By the end, half the jury was in tears. The verdict came back after 3 hours of deliberation. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge called Marcus's crimes a calculated betrayal of trust targeting vulnerable individuals. He noted the sophistication of the schemes, the number of victims, and Marcus's complete lack of remorse during the trial. Marcus was sentenced to 62 months in federal prison. 5 years and 2 months. Because multiple victims were elderly, the judge applied sentencing enhancements. Because the schemes crossed state lines, federal guidelines applied. Because Marcus had used his position of trust as a cruise employee to target passengers, the judge found aggravating circumstances. 5 years. My parents were in the courtroom. My mother collapsed when the sentence was read. My father helped her out, and as they passed my row, he looked at me with more hatred than I've ever seen in another human being's eyes. I sat there, completely still, and let him walk past. The civil proceedings moved faster than the criminal case. The cruise line recovered most of what they could from Marcus's accounts and the seized assets from his various schemes. Several victims, including Mrs. Chen, were awarded restitution from those assets. Because my house was central to one of the fraud schemes, and because I was the one who initially reported the deed fraud that unraveled everything, the court included me in the restitution process. The money Marcus had hidden, some in offshore accounts the FBI traced, some in cryptocurrency, some simply in cash he'd stashed at various locations, was seized and distributed among victims. I received $390,000. I didn't ask for it. I didn't expect it. But the prosecutor explained that as both a victim of the deed fraud and a crucial witness whose report led to the discovery of the larger schemes, I was entitled to compensation for the harm done. I've put the money in a trust. I don't want it for myself. I'm working with a financial advisor to set up a scholarship fund for medical laboratory science students. People like me, who work in the background finding the truth in the details. I want them to know that their work matters, even if their families don't understand it. And now, the part one never expected. 3 weeks ago, I received a letter. It was from the federal correctional facility where Marcus is serving his sentence. I almost threw it away unopened. I'm glad I didn't. The letter was handwritten, 3 pages long. I'm going to share some of it because it's the most honest thing Marcus has ever said to me. Daniel. They make us do therapy here. I thought it was a joke at first. I figured I'd say what they wanted to hear and move on. But the therapist, Dr. Williams, she's different. She doesn't let you get away with anything. She asked me to talk about my family. I told her the usual stuff. Mom and Dad are great. You're the successful one with the fancy job. I'm the screw-up who couldn't measure up. She stopped me right there. She said, "Tell me about one time your parents held you accountable for something." I couldn't think of one. Not a single time. She said, "Tell me about one time your parents praised your brother." I couldn't think of one of those either. That's when I started to understand what she was trying to show me. Our parents didn't raise me to be successful. They raised me to be comfortable. Every time I messed up, they smoothed it over. Every time I took shortcuts, they called it creativity. Every time I hurt someone, they called it misunderstanding. They told me I was special. They told me I was meant for great things. They told me you were morbid and cold and clinical, because saying that was easier than admitting that you were doing the hard, unglamorous work that actually matters while I was hosting pool games. I became a criminal because they never let me experience consequences. And when I needed more money to keep up the lifestyle they taught me I deserved, I took it from people who trusted me. I hurt people. I hurt a lot of people. I hurt Mrs. Chen, and I showed her a picture of your house to steal her savings. I hurt you by trying to steal something you worked for, something I never had the discipline to earn myself. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. Dr. Williams says forgiveness isn't something I'm entitled to, and she's right. I'm writing this because you deserve to know that I finally see it. All of it. You were never the broken one. You were the one who got out. And I hated you for it without even understanding why. I have 5 years to sit with what I've done. I'm going to use them. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm sorry for every time I let Mom and Dad make you feel like you were less than me. I'm sorry for being the golden child, who was actually just a monster they created. Marcus. I read that letter 7 times. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't look at it for a week. Then I took it to my therapist, and we spent 3 sessions on it. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Marcus. I don't know if I want to. But something in me shifted when I read his words. For the first time in my life, someone in my family acknowledged the truth. It shouldn't have taken federal prison and court-mandated therapy. It shouldn't have taken destroying dozens of lives. But it happened. One more piece of news. Dr. Patterson announced his retirement last week. True to his word, he recommended me as his replacement. The hospital board approved it unanimously. In 3 months, I'll be the head of the pathology department. I called my parents to tell them. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me still hoped. My mother answered. When I told her about the promotion, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "That's nice. Have you written to your brother? He needs support right now." I hung up. This time, I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not sadness, not disappointment. Just a kind of tired acceptance. Some things don't change. But I have. I've spent 31 years believing that I was the problem in my family, that my work didn't matter, that I was somehow defective for finding meaning in microscopes and tissue samples instead of cruise ships and standing ovations. I know better now. My name is Dr. Daniel Whitmore, and in 3 months, I'll be the head of pathology at a hospital that saves lives every single day. I will continue to find the truth in the details. I will continue to catch the diseases that others miss. I will continue to work in the quiet, in the background, where the real work happens. And I will never again let anyone make me feel ashamed of that. To everyone who followed this story, thank you. Your support meant more than you know. And to any pathologists, lab techs, or medical laboratory scientists reading this, to anyone who works in the invisible infrastructure of healthcare, I see you. I know what you do matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Final edit. Several people have asked about Mrs. Chen. I reached out to her through the Victim Services Coordinator. We met for coffee last week. She's doing okay. Her church community rallied around her, and her grandchildren have been helping her manage her finances. She thanked me for being honest in my testimony. I thanked her for being brave enough to share her story. She told me I reminded her of her late husband, who was also a doctor. She said he would have liked me. I'm not crying. You're crying.